Have you ever been told something like this? Slow down. You're working too fast. You're making us look bad. Anyone? I mean, is there such a thing as shining too brightly? Yes? No? In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the perils, yes, the perils of performing at your best, but also how to enjoy working at your best. My name is Paul Silva. The podcast is Seared, Stories from the Stove, and we're going to dive into what to do when you feel that others want to cut you down for being a tall poppy. Let's hit the grill with this. Now, before we dive in, I want to share a quick reminder. Take care of yourself. That is, like, literally take care of yourself. Today is a busy day for me. Countless meetings, planning sessions, appointments, client calls, shooting this very podcast as well, amongst other things. And the one thing that I made sure to schedule in was self-care. Jumping on the Peloton, lying down for a few minutes, scrolling on social, Epsom salt bath. I've actually scheduled those things into my day. So if you're going full on, just remember, not only is it okay to take breaks, but it's imperative that you take breaks. It's important you tend to your own needs. And if you don't schedule it, then there's a chance it probably won't happen. And I know not everyone works from home. I get it. I work from home. But wherever you are, make sure that you're taking the breaks, no matter how short they are. I mean, step outside if you can. Walk away from your workstation if you can. Close your eyes and take a few breaths for a minute or two if you can. Your mental, physical, and emotional health depend on you taking a bit of time for yourself. I cannot stress this enough. Now, I don't know where this came from. This wasn't planned, but I just feel someone out there, maybe it's you, someone out there needs to hear it. And so one of the things I love doing is just going with that intuitive hit. I was just very much compelled to share that. So whoever it's meant for, I hope you got it. And for all of us, just take those breaks. All right, so let's just jump right in. All right, imagine this. And this was me, so I don't have to imagine. I was there. It was one of my first days on the line, right? I'd been doing some prep time in the kitchen, in the production kitchen for some time. So this was like my first real apprenticeship. And while working in the production kitchen, I started to really prove myself. I was on time. I was productive. I knew my stuff. My coworkers were starting to trust me. And I was starting to fit in, and it felt so good. And I was starting to get comfortable around everyone, which just really helped me feel good, part of the team. And one day I got the tap. It was the sous chef saying, "Okay, Paul, you're going to be going to the restaurant." I was like, yes, I got to work on the line finally. And I was going onto the big stage. Now, where I worked, it was a huge brigade. It was like your typical hierarchical, chef de cuisine, sous chef, chef de partie, et cetera, et cetera. And I was at the bottom of that org chart, if you will. As an apprentice, I was a mere apprentice. But I was okay with that. I knew in my heart that I was going to move up. I think in the last episode, I talked about having a 5-year plan. And it was that same place. So I knew I was moving on up. I knew it, but I just had to work on now. I had to focus on what I could do now. So they take me to the kitchen and they put me in garde-manger. Now, for those who don't know, garde-manger is where they do the cold items. And so not just salads and things like that, but any sort of cold preparation, if you're doing buffets, any platters, anything like that. And the reason they tend to start people at garde-manger is, if you screw up, it's not an expensive screw up as opposed to someone working roast or, saucier or something like that, which is more intricate, first of all. But also if you mess things up, it's costlier, right? Your steaks and prime ribs and all that, fish and all that. So they generally start you on garde-manger to just break you in. It's very entry level. And so they put me there and I'm like, I'm cool. Now I had worked in restaurants before, so it wasn't my first rodeo, but it was my first kind of official time being in, an apprenticeship kind of program, etc. So they introduced me to whoever's running that department because, like I said, it was a very large brigade. So there was people supervising each department. And so I'm working away, just being shown a few things, and I'm getting into it. And we're getting ready for service, right? So it's my first kind of service up there. And like I said, I've worked in other restaurants, so I was familiar kind of with the ebb and flow of prep and service, etc. And one thing that tends to happen is there's like that magic hour, I call it, of service, before service approaches. And you start to hustle hard. You start to not only make sure that you have everything you need, but you tidy up your spaces too. You put any, dishes and pots and all that away. You start to clean up and make sure everything is prepared. You have your backups, everything's covered, all that kind of stuff. And, you tend to keep what you need only out. It's just, there tends to be last minute scrambles, but it's good. It's like you're getting hyped up and amped and ready to go. I feel hyped and amped up already. I must be like reliving it for sure. Now, it's about 45 minutes before service and I'm going hard. I'm flying. I mean, I'm fast and I'm very good. And it's not false modesty. I just am fast and I'm good. Sorry. And I'm hustling along. Now, the person training me wanders over. I notice she's been kind of eyeing me a little bit, as she's been doing her stuff. And I just assumed it was because she wanted to make sure that I was doing things properly. But apparently not. So as I'm going, she marches in and leans in and kind of quietly says, "Slow down." And I say, "What? Why? I like working quickly." And she said, "Yeah, but you're making us look bad." And I was like, oh. It was like different layers and levels of oh-ness. And I thought, that's interesting. Why would I be told to slow down? Like I'm quick. Why would she want me to slow down when I'm actually going to benefit her and the rest of the squad by moving quickly? And so I think at the time I said, okay. And I kind of maybe dialed it back a little bit. And so anyway, we started to prep. There was still about half an hour left. Now, at that time, they did like a lunch break just before service. I'm like, which was a first for me. I'd never seen a place that did that. And she said, "Okay, we're going to go to the room, the staff meal room, and we're going to eat." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay. I'm good. I'm just going to do a few things." She goes, No. Just come with us." I'm like, No, it's okay. And she looked at me dead in the eye. She's like, "No, you're coming with us." And again, I'm like, oh, okay. I get it. And so we marched over to the room and everyone was there and everyone was just like eating the stuff. I think I found a staple once. I remember eating there that was having salad and there's these big, in the salad, in the lettuce boxes, they have these huge match. Anyway, I always found these kind of things in my lunch. I don't know if someone's trying to kill me or what. And so we had lunch and then we went back down and we had service and it was fine. So, I remember reeling a little bit that day and saying, what was that about? And I just didn't know how to feel in the moment. I'm not sure. So what then? I mean, let me throw it to you, dear viewer / listener. What would you do in that situation? How would you have comported yourself after that? How would you have shown up after that? Well, before I share with you what I did and what you can do anytime you're caught in that kind of situation, I feel it's important to talk about the tall poppy syndrome. Now, you may or may not have heard this. The tall poppy syndrome, or I may refer to as TPS, is a social phenomenon that occurs when a person's success causes them to be attacked, resented, or criticized. In other words, successful individuals are cut down, chopped down, rather than celebrated for their accomplishments. Now, this often begins surreptitiously after a major or maybe some public achievement that sets them apart from their peers. And when this does happen, those successful people can often feel like they're being left out or ignored or silenced. A lot of times when you have someone that does really well, they're seemingly almost punished by given more work just to keep them busy, right? It's kind of like the crabs in the bucket. You know that one where a crab tries to get out and the other crabs pull it back down? It's like, you ain't going anywhere, homie. You're going to be with us. The Japanese have, I love this saying. It says, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down, which is nice, right?
Nice.
Individuals who succeed or shine are told that, eventually what happens sometimes, they're told that maybe they're difficult to work with, or that they're not team players, or are labeled as aggressive even if they speak up about injustices towards them, or being bullied or whatever. Achievements from these people are often downplayed and minimized. And what also happens is that some bosses will even jump in and take credit for the ideas or work that the overachiever had come up with or did, which kind of sucks. Obviously. It's awful. And sometimes, and this can get really gnarly, sometimes there's even questions about how that person succeeded so quickly, right? With innuendo and gossip and rumors and all that nonsense, thinking about what it is that they did to succeed. Now, as I talk about all this, obviously this is work related, but this too can happen in social circles as well, in friendship groups or families, even groups like book clubs, etc. So it's not just confined to work, but it does tend to happen, or is more noticeable at work. And just as a sidebar, I do want to note that when it comes to the workplace, there's an even greater scrutiny and even consequences for women. This tends to happen a lot to women. Now, I'm not going to go into that because that's a different discussion right now, but just want to put it out there that the majority of those who feel like they're at the affect of TPS are women. And I can totally see that. Thank you, patriarchy. Jeez. So what's also interesting is that this is something that traditionally has been most prevalent in Australia and New Zealand. Canada too. Hello, Canadian. I don't know if you know I'm Canadian. Many see ambition as a negative trait. Now, in the US or other sort of competitive countries, so to speak, it's not as prevalent, as individualism and ambition is seen favorably, right? Anyway, so what does this have? Anyway, who cares, right? Like, what is this all about? Well, like, how does this affect people? So when you're kind of like, if you're suffering from TPS, like I said, it can sometimes feel like you're cornered, right? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. They know, like I felt, it's hard to reel it in. Like, why would you settle for mediocrity when you can just go hard at your level, like to shine? But the reality is that, others can make your life at work hell. So often those who are in that position find themselves stepping into anxiety, depression, insomnia, a loss of confidence or performance issues, which is kind of ironic, right? They can have relationship problems outside of work and even get into substance abuse issues. Now, from a workplace standpoint, this can affect morale, this can affect productivity, corporate culture, if that's the kind of place you're in, and even the bottom line, right? It's like money, money, money. Like it affects, I promise I'm not to sing very often here. Money, it affects the money, the bottom line with money. Now, why would others want to chop the tall poppies down? I never understood this. At the time, I was younger and I didn't have these kind of conversations. I just didn't understand, like, why would people do that? But, looking back, and if you're more mature than I was back then, it probably seems fairly obvious. It can range from envy or jealousy, Fears like maybe not getting that promotion you wanted, or of losing your job, or looking bad, or maybe their bonus being affected. So there's lots of fears around that as well. It could be low self-esteem. It could be resentment. It could be blaming others for, their own lot in life. Many reasons. There's also the fear that the powers may increase the workload for everyone. Now, some of these tall poppies, another term for them in some places called rate busters, like rate busters. That is someone who breaks through the implicitly or explicitly stated rate of performance. So example, let's say you work in a real estate agent, brokerage or whatever. I don't know all the terms. My apologies. And, I know I've had many clients who are real estate agents. And one of the things that they have to do is a certain amount of cold calls a week. So let's say there's they say you need to have like 100 calls a week. And so everyone kind of understands 100 is the designated number. You may have someone coming in, someone probably like me coming in. I'm like, I'm going to do 200, and they're doing 200. And everyone knows this. They would probably call someone like that a rate buster, because now, I don't know, maybe a ball buster. I don't know. But now everyone's feeling it, because now so-and-so is doing 200 when the sort of implicit and explicit number was 100. And that can cause a lot of friction, as you can see. So it's pretty much the same thing. Now, I know that when I was in my situation as that apprentice, I have to admit, I felt a bit ashamed about how I worked. I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I was new, I was eager, and I didn't want my fellow cooks to hate me. I had to work close by them and shoulder to shoulder, and I couldn't handle, my nervous system couldn't handle being stressed with the tension of it all. There was enough to stress about to begin with, with how many covers and all that kind of stuff. So that was on one hand, but on the other hand, I had ambitions. I had goals. I wasn't content at working at 40% or 60% of my capacity to make others around me feel better about themselves. I didn't want to be a rate buster. This was a unionized place too. So there was the additional layer, brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever. So I was kind of stuck in this gray zone. I didn't know what to do. Now, mentioned substance abuse earlier. I was drinking at the time. I wasn't way off the scale yet, but I was able to blow off some steam after work at least. But it didn't solve the issue. What we now understand, in understanding the tall poppy syndrome, it's that it affects everyone. So what do we do about it? What did I do about it? Well, I'll tell you. When we return, we're going to get into how to tackle tall poppy syndrome and hopefully get you into a place where you can shine and also feel safe in your workplace. So go get a biscotti or a pastrami sandwich or whatever it is, and we'll reconvene at the coffee station. So come right back. Welcome back. Did you eat? Did you intake a beverage? Anything? I wouldn't want you to listen or watch while you're hangry. Speaking of listening and watching, if you're finding this episode valuable or helpful in any way, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment, share, like, or if you're listening, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening and give it a few stars if you could. That would be so kind. This would be mega super useful for me to get the word out more. I feel like the podcast is starting to get a bit of traction, and that's thanks to you guys. So I'd love to continue that. So anyway, and by the way, speaking of comments, I just realized just yesterday or day before that I had missed some comments on YouTube. I wasn't getting the notifications I thought I was. So please, if I hadn't answered in a week or two, I wasn't ignoring you. I think I've got that fixed now. So if you do comment, I promise I will get to it as soon as possible and not 2 weeks later. So my deepest apologies. All right, let's get to the nitty gritty. If you're finding that you're getting punished or bullied because you shine brightly, here are a few things that you can consider that can help you out. 1, recognize that this is not about you. It's about them. I know it doesn't make it easier, but know that there's nothing wrong with you. It's a reflection of where they're at or the culture of the company as a whole. You're not responsible for tiptoeing around other people's wounds or triggers. They are. It's on them. They're the ones that have to do their own work, literally and figuratively. So know that you are absolutely wonderful and perfectly imperfect and doing the best you can. So just please, like that's my heart speaking to you. That would be the first thing to understand. 2, show compassion to yourself and to others. Now, this is piggybacking a bit off the point I just made. We know that others are reacting from a place of hurt, of pain, neglect, unworthiness, suffering, whatever it is. They're not comfortable with themselves or in their own skin. There might be insecurity there for sure. Allow them to be themselves as they are today, and do your best and strive to accept and see them as they are. Not easy, I know. Believe me, it's easy to say sitting here behind a microphone. Not easy when you feel the pressure and you're feeling hurt and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes when I've gotten to know some of the people who are telling me to slow down or stop shining or whatever, I saw who they were. I was able to talk to them and see what worked for them while honoring myself. So for example, the person who told me to slow down, what I realized later, one place she was coming from was from a motherly place. She had seen others burn out and didn't want that to happen to me. She was also worried about additional work on her. And because she was older, she had worries of not being able to keep up or even maybe losing her job. And when I found that out, I shared with her that I was there to help her department, to make her look even better, to help the customers more, the diners. And as I started to share that part, she started to see she was fine with me going at my own pace. Now, my exchange in this was that I would definitely take lunch with them instead of trying to power through. And I mean, that not only was it good for me, it also meant that I got to get closer to the team and I wasn't ostracizing myself. And that took some compassion. That took me time to open up and just see that she wasn't the enemy. 3, find support. There's no doubt there are others who are not against you or out to get you. Others who may see you as an inspiration or an ally or a friend. Surround yourself with those people. People who see you for who you are and vice versa. It's powerful. Even having one person in your corner can make a huge difference. I mean, it depends on the size of the place, of course. But having that one person can make work so much easier and just emotionally more safe. 4, don't waste energy fighting back. Your energy and attention is a valuable resource. Mind it. Just get on with the business of doing business. And don't let others drag you down to their level of conscious awareness and discomfort. What you say and what you do will be scrutinized more than anything they may do to provoke you. So stand in integrity. 5, create and enforce boundaries. This may seem to contradict the point I just made in some ways, but don't let others cross your boundaries. And the thing with boundaries is communicating them clearly and also what can be expected if they are crossed. And this has to be done beforehand. So if you do that and someone decides, it's a decision, to cross a boundary, you've already told them what to expect. It's not a surprise. And this can mean asserting yourself, not picking a fight. That's different. One example, this was when I was a manager, and I love this. It didn't have anything to do with me. There was a guy that I had hired, and he was fantastic. And I was calling the line, which expediting. So when the orders come in, I call them, I organize them, call them out, I call to the stations, what's needed, et cetera, et cetera. And so he was right in front of me. He was working the veg station, the entremetier. And he was newish, maybe 2 weeks. And one of the other guys who'd been there some time started to like, kind of testing. I can see he was testing where he can go with this guy. And he started to kind of talk a little trash about someone else. And this guy stopped him right in his tracks. He said, "I am here to work. I am not here to gossip." And he turned around and started working. And I thought, love it. Brilliant. And I was like, this guy gets it. And the other person just kind of like, oh, okay. And they walked away. They didn't hate him or whatever. The guy had a boundary, which was gossip. And he called the other guy out. That's it. Done. It took 5 seconds. And that's an example of what, like, just call it out as necessary, as needed, but in a firm, calm, clear way, just like this guy did. That can stop things so quickly. And that can put anyone who's bullying, it does put them in their place a lot, or at least questions them. It questions, like, they'll question themselves next time they want to say anything sassy. 6, keep doing what you're doing. You won't back down. Like, refuse to dull your light for anyone. If you have a gift or ability, then it's on you to use it or not use it. The world needs people with gifts and talents. We have enough mediocrity out there, or at least those who choose or are afraid not to go in all in themselves. Again, see if there's a way of creating a win-win situation for all involved. And that may involve even HR or management or whatnot. But don't get smacked down just because others are uncomfortable with it. Like, don't be that hammer getting nailed down. Stand your ground with that. And lastly, if all else fails, then find happiness elsewhere. That may mean a transfer to another team or department, even if it's that kind of place, if it's large enough, or it means just leaving the company altogether and finding a place more in line with your values. And it's easy for me to say standing behind the microphone, sitting behind the microphone, but sometimes removing yourself from the situation after all else has failed is the correct action. It's the correct course. Now, remember, everything I've been talking about has been workplace focus, but this can apply, again, to your personal or social life. If your so-called friends are jealous, they put you down, for having accomplishments. Let's say you lost weight, or you got a good job or promotion, or you found a great romantic partner, whatever, and they're kind of putting you down and making you feel bad. Or if they're kind of telling you, don't get your head too big or whatever it is, then try these suggestions with them. Again, worst comes to worst, or in this case, might be best case scenario, you release your friends. You release them and find others who see you for who you are and want the best for you. And I've had to do that too. And it's not easy. But once you do it, I'm telling you, woof, it's a great relief. And, as I was just listening to myself rattle these things off, one thing came to me. And that is, check in with yourself. Are you shining because that's your nature and you're doing it because it's natural and you want to serve and be at your best? And putting it in, proper perspective, like, humility and confidence and such? Or are you doing it to show others up, being malicious, being spiteful? Are you hoping to get others in trouble? Are you showboating? Are you coming from ego? Like, I'm hot shit. If so, then, my friend, you're being a bit of a tool. You're being a pylon, a hammer toss. Ask yourself, why are you doing it? And see what happens. See what comes up. Be curious with yourself, because this may be part of a deeper problem. We all have our own securities and insecurities and fears and all that. And maybe for you, that there's a sense of like, I need to show up in a certain way or show everyone up. Again, check in with yourself. So, what did I do in my situation? Well, I did give an example of talking to my department head and working it out with her. I also made it clear to everyone that I wanted to learn. So I made sure that I asked others how they did things. I took interest in what they were doing. I asked them what was the best way to do X, Y, or Z, even though I didn't have to do it their way. But I was curious with them, right? And in doing so, I made them feel useful and needed, which also kind of disarmed them in some way, right? I also got to know them more as people while we had staff meal, and I talking to them on the line a bit. I created those boundaries and enforced them, the ones I just talked about, that just having those limits. And I also did all this to create a sense of teamwork, and that I was there just to do my best. I also joked about having young blood in me and all that. So I took some of the heat off with some humor as well. Humor is so powerful. And throughout the whole thing, I didn't call attention to myself. I kind of kept it low key while I let my work do the talking for me. And with that, I moved along the line, working with other people and learning a ton and doing what I did, just making sure I felt like, they felt included and how I wanted to learn, etc., which was honest. But what's interesting is that after I left, I was there for like just less than a year. I returned about 15 years later, and I was the boss of those same people who trained me and told me to slow down. And I don't say that to be smug, not at all. I love them, even working beside them and managing them. I love them. But I say this because if I truly played it small and slow when they asked me to, I wouldn't have gotten to where I got. You never know where you will go. The only way to know is to play full out. Don't cave to other people's limits. Don't let people pull the parachute or put the brakes on in your own vehicle, in your life. Shine bright. Shine often. Take up the space that's been bestowed upon you. It would be a disservice to yourself and others if you were to play it small. So keep at it, homie. We need your brilliance. Can I get an amen? So let me know. I'd love to know if you have ever experienced this in your workplace or social circles. What did you do about it? What lessons did you learn? Drop it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening, I have a Seared Facebook page, and you can drop your thoughts there. I'd love to see what you think about this. Whew, I did a lot of talking. All right, my main damies. Service is done. Kitchen's closed. Now scram.